Hello and welcome. I'm Ari Lax, and this week we got a nice champion deck. We have Kevin Jones's Grixis deck that he won the last US WMCQ with, defeating Sam Black in the finals. And when people say that control is dead in modern, I kind of just point them to this deck, and really, there's this whole debate over what actually is and isn't control. And honestly, when it comes down to it at the end of the day, if you compare a card like Delver of Secrets to a card like Ancestral Visions, they basically have the same effect, right? You play them cheaply and you try to untap with them X number of times and take over the game. When you play like a 5 mana card draw spell, putting it in your hand at the start of the game is very similar to Ancestral Visions. You're just waiting until the point you cast it. And the functionality is very similar. You're trying to answer your opponent's cards so that your clock, whether it is drawing extra cards or your single evasive creature, kills them in the meantime. Um, one of them just happens to have a tertiary stage where you've waited a bunch and cast your Pearl Lake Ancient, whereas this, you're just attacking to start with, and it's your threat that actually wins the game has started the game on the battlefield. But enough about philosophy of the format and why this deck's actually a control deck. Let's go through what's going on here. So this is a fairly low to the ground version of Grixis, different from the ones that Corey Burkhart had some success with earlier this year, end of last year. This deck, the goal is to land a Delver, Secrets, or Young Pyromancer, like I said, and then chip away your opponent's relevant stuff until they lose. So you have those. You are also set up to aggressively resolve a Delve creature. So you've got a bunch of Tassigurs and a Gurmag Angler. And the reason you're super heavy on Tassigur is because it's significantly easier to play a turn 2 Tassigur off a turn 1 Thought Scour than it is to play a turn 2 Gurmag Angler. So fetch land, Thought Scour is 4 cards in graveyard, and you just need any other land to cast the Tassigur, whereas you need another fetch land for the Gurmag Angler. Also, there's like Ataxian Probe Chains with Tassigur that work, or in theory, if you have another fetch land, you can play, or not even with another fetch land. With Tassigur, you can play like a Lightning Bolt and still get in there off your untapped land. Just like little things that add up there in terms of resolving it a little earlier or with mana up. And then beyond those, we have Snapcaster Mage, Young Pyromancer, again, your low to the ground threat. Snapcaster, this is your value threat that you kind of see in all these decks. That's really the power level driver for what's going on. So you're heavy on cantrips here. You have 3 Gitaxian Probes, 4 Thought Scours, 4 Serum Visions. Again, we're powering out pretty fast threats. Having a more tempo-esque mana base, only 19 lands, 9 fetches, double Steam Vents on the dual basic side, double Island, you're blue heavier because of the cantrips, and then a Sulphur Falls and a Darkslick Shores. This is definitely a deck that will be playing some blue-red fast land once Kaladesh comes out, or at least considering it. And then we have the stack of interaction. Lightning Bolt's a no-brainer. We're a pretty aggressive Delve deck. We can afford some Murderous Cut, but for the rest of the time, we're going to be terminating our opponent's creatures. We have Electrolyze and Kolaghan's Command as ways to kind of get value and do things a little bigger. You do actually hit 3 lands in this deck because of all your cantrips. And then the notable difference from the bigger list is that those decks tend to opt for Inquisition of Kozilek, whereas this deck opts for Mana Leak. And it's just a matter of the big deck can't really position itself as well to leave up its mana. It's not going to like play a Delver and then leave up its mana while it's Delver's chipping away. It's going to try to get in position to resolve its Tasker and kill them with it. And that turn that you resolve that Tasker, you might be exposed. So you need the Inquisition of Kozilek. That also plays into the bigger decks playing Jace Vryn's Prodigy, because Mana Leak plus Jace Vryn's Prodigy is not the best combo in the world. Whereas this deck, Delver plus Mana Leak, Delver plus Counterspell is kind of just the thing. It's like what you're supposed to do with the card, right? You got Spell Snare as well to take care of basically everything Spell Snare takes care of. The card is just very powerful in the format right now. And then you have some small amount of discard and Collective Brutality. You're still a control attrition strategy, and the ability to force extra bonus trades for a single card is really, really good. This card is consistently been great in modern testing, and one of the more important additions over the last year or so to the format, aside from Eldrazi. So if you look at the sideboard, Kevin has three main categories of cards here. So you've got your ability to juke your interaction to chip shot and interact with combo decks. You've got Dispels, also good in control mirrors, but takes care of various things like Goryo's Vengeance, Spell Pierce as a kind of catch-all. Some surgical extractions for Dredge, as well as um, just like a lot of things surgical extraction works against. I've actually had issues with it out of the red-green Valakut deck. Not necessarily this deck will cause those, but in theory, you can catch your opponent with a Primeval Titan in the graveyard and surgical those or something like that. And then a counter Squall again to add to your counter suite. For the matchups where you really have to counter a specific spell, this card kind of takes care of that the best. Just the split mana cost is really nice. The free life loss is really nice. Just all around great. We've then got our battlefield interaction. We've got some Magma Sprays. Those take care of additional. You have terminates and stuff for big creatures, and you can kind of handle those with Spell Snare, killing Tarmogoyf, and manually take care of the rest. But sometimes you just need to load up on small creature interaction for like Goblin Guides or whatever. And Magnum Spray does that best because it also kills Kitchen Finks. You have is a Staticaster for decks like Affinity and Infect just to kind of pick off all their stuff. Engineered Explosives for decks like Suicide Zoo. And then Vandal Blast for Affinity. And then we've got our cards that let us go big and go toe-to-toe with some of the like attrition decks of the format. Painful Truths is just the most powerful straight-up way to do that. You don't want to wait for Ancestral Vision to resolve. You could just cast Painful Truths for 3 cards right on the spot. And in theory, you should just be going under your opponent anyways, so you can be like realistically aggressive and stick around through interaction. We got some Kolaghan's Commands, one of the better grindy cards in the format, and then a Desolate Lighthouse. It is kind of awkward to have Painful Truth's Desolate Lighthouse supporting up a mana that way, but the Lighthouse just gives you later game flexibility as you board out some of the worse one-for-one stuff in those matchups. So this deck is kind of Kevin's wheelhouse, and I was hoping to get in some games and just see how the Delver plan feels right now. It's kind of interesting that back to the whole Ancestral Vision Delver comparison. There's metagames where you want one or the other for your control deck, right? So Ancestral Vision is worse when people are going way under you super fast because it's hard to protect yourself from dying while your Ancestral Vision is suspended. But at the same time, Delver Secrets is bad if your opponents are bolting down all your creatures. And I think that the metagame is not quite in the Lightning Bolt spot, so I think that Delver Secrets really has its chance to shine right now. And I'm hoping that Delver Secrets for the fun for me side, where it flips immediately, shows up today. But I guess we will see what happens.